Successful Blunders, historias de fracaso que inspiraron el éxito. Puedes conocer más en successfulblunders.com. Con ustedes, Alberto Lugo.
Welcome, my friends, to a new episode of Successful Blunders podcast, where we talk about failure with successful entrepreneurs so you learn what not to do in your business so you can scale fast. And in this episode, we have Adam Beguelin, co-founder of Hobbleton, Puerto Rico, a specialized school in software development. But I'm going to let Adam talk a little bit about himself and what he's doing right now. So, Adam, welcome to the podcast.
Great. Thanks for having me. This is exciting.
Adam, can you talk to me a little bit about who you are as an entrepreneur, your past lives, and what you're doing now?
Sure. Yeah. So my background is I trained as a computer scientist. So I got a PhD in computer science. I did a couple of postdocs. I was on the faculty at Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh teaching computer science, mainly distributed programming, supercomputing stuff. I taught the first web technology class at Carnegie Mellon back in 96, I think it was. And then I got recruited to a startup in Silicon Valley in 1996. If you remember, well, many people won't remember, but in 1995, Netscape went public. And that sort of kicked off the whole .com thing from pretty much 95 to, things fell apart, 2000, 2001. And that's when I got recruited to a search engine company in 96. So things were starting to heat up. Search engines, people didn't realize how critical search engines were going to be. At that time, Yahoo, AOL. And so basically I got recruited to a company called Ink2Me, which was a search engine company. And we did search, but we did other things as well, other network products, internet infrastructure stuff. And that was my first experience with Silicon Valley. It was great. The company was, 20 something people when I joined. We went public in 98. The stock went from $13 a share to roughly $1,000 split adjusted.
Wow.
It was a crazy ride. That was my first experience. And then of course, so it was a $25 billion company at one point. And then 2 years later, it was worth $500 million. So, great rise,
massive growth.
Yes. So in 2000, I left the company, I think in 2000, end of 2000, beginning of 2001. And then I started another company. And in the end, I think I've been involved in 7, now 8 startups and co-founded 4. So, I had, I guess, 2 hits. I would consider Ink2Me a hit, right? It was a success. In the end, of course, lots of things crashed at that time. But I think we made a big impact on the way things are done. If you look at the way the internet is structured today, I think Ink2Me had a big impact on that. Yeah. Then I did a few other companies that did not fail or that did not succeed, that did fail.
Okay.
In fact, I'll do a shameless plug. I wrote a book, Silicon Valley Stories.
Awesome. So that's in my queue.
It's published in April. Hopefully we can put the link in the show notes.
We will.
So there's some stories of those failures and those successes in that book. The other success that I had was I started a company called Truvio, which is a video search company. We started that in 2004. This was this is before YouTube, right? This is, I think Netflix at that time was mailing DVDs around.
Yeah.
So, this is early in video. And so we had some ideas on how to build a better video search engine. And we built that, started that in 2004, launched the site at the end of 2005 or summer 2005. And then actually we were acquired at the end of 2005 by AOL. So, and that was a very positive outcome as well.
So you are the definition of a serial entrepreneur. For those of you that don't know what that is people that start companies and then sell them or get a buyer.
Sell. Yeah, exactly. exactly.
So, being a serial entrepreneur, Adam, I guess you can talk so much about success and failure because you already told us that some of these companies did not succeed. So, I bet you have some cool stories to share with us.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's interesting. Yeah. It's called successful blunders, right? And when I look back at the failures, I think most of the failures had to do with team, right? And mistakes in building the team. So after, maybe just starting with the wrong co-founder, right? So I started a company with the wrong co-founder. We didn't get along. It didn't work. That was a disaster.
Starting from the get-go, starting with the wrong partner. That's
key, right?
Reading all over the place.
Yeah. So, I think, and so I have a good example actually with the company I started after Truvio was called Sensornet, right? And so the idea was, you have these cheap security cameras, this is 2009, 2008. I started playing around with these cameras, right? And there was no cloud service for these cameras. They were just, you had to put a DVR in your basement, or you had to have a PC that was running some software that would record from the cameras.
Yeah, I remember those days.
Yeah, exactly. And so I thought, well, this is obvious. It should just record in the cloud, right? So I started Sensornet, and it was called Sensornet because it was more than just cameras, right? We thought home automation, you'll have motion sensors, you'll have all kinds of stuff, right? And so we built, Sensornet. We built a quick prototype. I had great team. Okay, the team was fantastic on the technical side. So no complaints. We were like amazing technical entrepreneurs, right? We were building software. We could crank stuff out quickly. We end up initially we raised $1.5 million from Spark Capital in Boston, and Charles River Ventures put some money in. A bunch of my friends put money in. We were cranking along, and I was a CEO. It was really my first time as CEO. And the mistake I made was in putting the team together. I hired people I want to hang out with, right? So I loved my team. They were great. And unfortunately, they were like me, right? They were actually, they all had PhDs except for our graphic designer. So we had 3 PhDs. We all love writing code. And what do? We rent an office in Burlingame, California. And we sat down and we wrote code, right? And we had this amazing software system. But what I should have done in our strategy was to sell our cloud service to the camera manufacturers. So, think of, these cheap Chinese manufacturers, they can make hardware, but they can't really build a really good software system.
Yeah, most of the time when you buy hardware from China, the configuring it and getting it to work, it's very difficult because the software sucks. Exactly. So we had an SDK. We had an SDK that we said, okay, put this on your camera. It'll automatically config it with, you would point the camera at a QR code. It would automatically config, jump on your Wi-Fi, off you go, record to the cloud. Beautiful.
We had all that working, right? And this is 2011, before Nest Cam existed, before Ring existed, all the guys that are big now.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you that because these days it's pretty common to have cameras pointed to the cloud, but back then it was not.
Exactly. So we were probably the first or among the first to build this. It was us, and there was a company called Dropcam. Dropcam got acquired by Google and is now called Nest Camera. And so we started about the same time. And so what they did, which we should have done, was really figure out the hardware angle, right? And so we were just like, we'll build the software and we'll so here's the mistake I made in the team, right? I did not hire a BD guy or a sales guy to go sell our stuff into the hardware manufacturers. So that was my mistake, right? I should have taken, I probably shouldn't have hired 3 PhDs. I should have hired, 1 or, spent more money. We had money, right? I should have just hired the guys that were going to go do the sales, make the camera deals, and that would have made us, I think, a success.
This is a management decision. So you had the money, you came from other successful ventures. It was just that you were having fun coding, I guess, with the team, and were not paying attention to hiring the salespeople, because without sales, obviously it was going to be a flop.
Right. So I thought I could do it, right? So I'm like, okay, so I was going and meeting with, we're in Silicon Valley, right? So I would spend time going meeting with the chip guys. We met with Ambarella a lot.
Okay.
They are the chip that's in Nest, the Nest Cam or the Drop Cam. They're in the GoPro. These were like the high-end chip guys, right?
Yeah.
We got into their SDK. So I thought, oh, well, these guys will help us because they only make money if they sell more chips. So they said, oh yeah, we'll help you. We'll take you into these camera, companies. And they eventually got us connected to one. But, we were small fries, right? We should have, and I'm not a sales guy, right? So I that was my mistake, right? I thought I could do sales and I should know better, right? I'm not a sales guy.
It's difficult, right? To sell.
Right.
It's very difficult, and people overestimate or subestimate closing the sale, because you can talk to a lot of people, but actually the ones signing the POs are the clients.
Yep. So I think that's team, right? So that's an example of a bad team decision. That was my decision, and in the end, the Spark Capital wrote off their investment, and the company still it's a zombie, right? It's still running along. In fact, I just saw the taxes we did for last year. Last year I think the revenue was like $100,000, right? And then this year, for the previous year, it was 100,000. Now it's 80,000, right? And so it's just slowly dying. And we've paid back the investors maybe half of the remaining investors maybe half their money, right? But it's probably needs to be shut off now, because it's going to start costing more to run it than it is than it makes.
For sure. And you mentioned a few companies. Do you have other stories that you can share with us?
So we had this so here's another story about team, right? And we had, so when I sold Truvio to AOL, my mentor at AOL was this great guy. He had been at Warner Music. He came in to help AOL with their video strategy. And we became friends. And then as Sensornet was sort of dying, and actually about the time I was moving to Puerto Rico, he approached me and said, "Oh, I've got this idea. We want to build this cool app, and we've got this guy that is really a fantastic app guy. He designs apps. He did the HBO Go app, and we need a technical person. We've got a great marketing person. So we've got the design. So I'm thinking about the team, right? Because I'm like, oh, last time I kind of screwed up.
That was last failure, so you want to correct that.
Yeah, exactly. So I didn't make that same mistake, right? We had a great team in terms of each individual. The problem was we never really knew each other, right? So we had three guys in New York, and then we had me in San Francisco, but moving to Puerto Rico, and then I had another guy that I hired, another tech guy in San Francisco. So we kind of had like, and for a startup, it just doesn't make sense, right? You've got kind of design and marketing in New York, and then you've got some tech guys in San Francisco, and then you've got me who's like not really paying attention because I'm not 100% focused. Yeah. And so I think that's a key. And so I was one of the problems with that team, right? I admit it, right? I kind of was doing it almost like a favor to my friend, right? As opposed to like
difficult because you come from a successful exit, so you're in a different position in your life, I guess.
Yes.
Where when you're starting something, if the other people are razor sharp focused and they really want to make it, and you're not in that same boat, it's difficult to relate to them, right?
Yes. Yeah. So the way I say it is, I'm just not hungry anymore, right? And so you got these other guys, like the guy I hired in San Francisco. He was super hungry and he was pushing hard, but we had this kind of dysfunctional team. And so he's gone on to a very successful startup. So you have to have the hunger, right? And the focus and the drive. And so that, again, it's evaluating the team and the team dynamics. Maybe if you have the right people, they can work distributed. In this case, we were all kind of doing our own things and never really coordinated well. And, and once we actually got to know each other, there were personality issues, right? So,
yeah, sure. Yeah. So that's also an issue, because if you don't know the person you're partnering with, it might happen that you're not that relatable when you start knowing that person, or you're not in the same page. I think communication is very important when you have a partner or a team, so everybody's on the same page, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, you have to think of it like this is a serious relationship. You're going to be spending a lot of time with this person, right? Do you get along? Do you like spending time with them? Those are critical issues. When you sign up for this, you're going to be, you're talking about years of your life. So make sure that this is the right people you want to be hanging around with. Do you trust them? Do you have each other's back? That kind of thing.
And you also talked to me a little bit before we started about burning through cash in another one of the startups. Can you expand a little bit on that one?
Yeah. So for instance, it was that same company, the one that we were going to build this app, the one that was based in New York and San Francisco. I mean, we were supposed to be a scrappy startup, right? Yeah. And our, the guys in New York came from, they worked for big companies, and so one of the things they did was hire this like New York lawyer to do all of our incorporation. Oof. And you should spend around $10,000, right, to do all your incorporation stuff, right? That was kind of the number I was used to. And these guys, I think, spent, I don't even want to say, I don't know. I know it was a lot, right? Yeah. I should look back at the bill, but I'm sure it was, many times that. And it was ridiculous, right? And and also he wasn't a Silicon Valley lawyer, right? He was more of a New York media lawyer. And so they were doing just crazy things like they would put together a term sheet that they said, well, we can put together a term sheet for you. Well, your lawyer at a startup, you don't put together the term sheet, right? No, the investors put together the term sheet, and you respond to the term sheet. And so we were just wasting, this guy's probably charging us $500 an hour to do work that wasn't even necessary.
To a startup that you're trying to save us.
So here's one thing you can do, which I did at almost all my startups, was, you find a lawyer that's also a scrappy lawyer, right? That knows how to do startups. And when we did Truvio, for instance, our lawyers didn't take any upfront money, right? We knew them. They knew we were good entrepreneurs. They took a bet on us. They did all that work up front for no upfront money. And they said, when you get funding, then we'll bill you, right? And we'll bill you this reasonable amount, which is about $10,000.
That's some great advice right there. That's some great advice to our audience, because I didn't know you could even entertain that idea.
Yes, you can find, especially in Silicon Valley, but I would imagine anywhere, if you can find lawyers that will basically front you the money to form your company, to do the options, set up, basic incorporation, option plan, founder agreements, non-disclosures, intellectual property agreements, the kind of the standard thing that you need to get off the ground when you're just two guys with an idea, and two girls with an idea, right? Just you can find these lawyers that are savvy, and if you have a good idea, you can convince them. And actually, it's a good test. Maybe if you can't convince a lawyer to make a $10,000 bet on you, maybe you don't have a good bet, right? But it is common, right, to get the lawyers, and especially if they know, oh, these guys are going to get funded, we're going to get paid in 6 months, right? So it's not a big risk on their part. Frankly, all these incorporation papers are pretty standard. They're just going to tweak them a little bit. So, I think it's a win-win.
So let me ask you something. These days, you're a successful entrepreneur. You're working with new ventures, but every now and then when you get approached by a new idea or a team of people looking for funding, what do you look for?
I think, well, I think it is team. I keep saying team, but
No, but that's great, because that's the whole thing about your episode. It's that it's very important to assess your team where you're doing any kind of work.
yeah, I mean, you have to. So, I worked with Travis Kalanick at his, the founder of Uber, his previous startup, right? I was his CTO at his previous company. And you could just see, I mean, that company did okay. It was a nice exit, but it was no Uber, of course. But you could tell at that time that this guy is driven, right? He was super smart, super driven, and so I think, and that's just kind of a feeling, right? You meet somebody like that and you want to work with them, right? So I think you have to kind of, when I assess startups for investing or advising, it's how do I feel about the teams, the people on the team, and also how do I mean, obviously the idea is important, but you can make the argument that if you have a good team and a bad idea, the good team will find a way to make the bad idea better, right?
Yeah, B idea with A team.
That you need an A team, yeah.
Yeah, B idea or C idea with an A team can make it successful, right?
Yes.
Maybe not hockey puck successful, but successful.
Yeah.
Nonetheless. All right.
Yeah.
So team, it's important, guys. Remember that. And I think most of the things that you're describing in this episode are totally due to the team dynamics. Adam, we're just getting to the end of the podcast, and I wanna learn a little bit more about Holbulton and what are you doing these days here in the Caribbean.
Yes. So we've been in Puerto Rico 4.5 years. We love it. We moved from Silicon Valley. I love the culture in Puerto Rico, the fact that people are so warm and open, and there's always something interesting to do.
Yeah.
We heard about the tax incentives and we're like, wow, this sounds great. I should move to Puerto Rico. I can start my next company, sell it, and pay zero tax. Oh, okay, that's a great idea. It is. When I got to Puerto Rico, of course, I'm having too much fun to actually start a company, really. So that's a drawback. But I got involved in Parallel 18 as a mentor. We've invested in some private equity funds that invest in Puerto Rico. And one of the things I see was companies like yours, right? There's not enough raw talent, not enough programmer talent. And so I saw that as a problem. And as an entrepreneur, what do? You solve your own problems. So I want to hire more people, but I don't have any trained coders in Puerto Rico, or not enough, right? There are trained coders, great coders there, but we need more. And so I found out about Holbulton. Holbulton is itself a startup. It's been running in San Francisco for over 5 years. They are churning out top-notch programmers, and they have franchised their model. And so the model is it's a 2-year program, but you start working after 9 months. So you go in, very intensive full-time program for 9 months, and when you come out, you start making money. And you also don't pay us. So we don't take any money until you get a job. And when you get a job, you do it. Before you start, you sign an income share agreement, which says you're going to give us 17% of your salary for 5 years and pay us back with a cap. So you'll never pay us more than $55,000. So basically, we're fronting your education.
So you are like that lawyer you were talking about. You're doing all the work and then billing at the end, right?
Exactly, right? So we're betting. It's like a mini startup, right? Like I am betting on these students, right? The students come in. It's tough to get in. It's not easy, right? We only have 50 slots. Applications are actually open for 1 more week. So please, if you know anybody, let them know. Applications are open. We start the day after Labor Day, September 8th, for our first cohort. We'll take up to 50 people. So get in now. In January, we'll take another 50. And next June, we'll take another 50. So 3 times a year, we have openings. And that cohort is going along with the cohort in San Francisco, the cohort in Connecticut, the cohort in France, the cohorts in Colombia, Mexico. So you're kind of with, you're also, it's a networking opportunity, I think, for the students, right? They're going to get to these amazing coders also all over the world. Just like when you go to I went to Carnegie Mellon, right? Or I worked at Carnegie Mellon. So I have my Carnegie Mellon network, right? I got my PhD from Boulder, Colorado. So I have my Colorado network. That's another advantage, I think, of going to Holberton, right?
That helps you so much. It's not only about education, but about networking and having people everywhere. So that's very important. I want to thank you for doing this in Puerto Rico, because being part of the ecosystem, I'm well aware of the need that we have to train more people in technology. So I'm thankful for that. And I've been collaborating with your director on finding people.
Thanks for the help. Thanks for all your help.
Yeah. So Adam, where can people find you?
Well, I think mainly, you should Google Holberton, Puerto Rico, right? And you'll find our Facebook page. And so that's probably the best place to find out about Holberton. And of course, I'm there as well. I would also Google Silicon Valley Stories and look for this book.
Silicon Valley Stories, guys. It's my next book.
I'll put the link, of course, in the show notes for both
All right,
of us.
Adam, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Right.
Successful Blunders, historias de fracaso que inspiraron el éxito. Puedes conocer más en successfulblunders.com.